Welcome to AFrame Lesson 1.6. In this lesson, we're going to explore a new component of AFrame that's going to help us improve the performance of our worlds. Now, up until now, our worlds have been pretty simple. They load up quick, they react quick. But as your world grows, you're going to want to squeeze every bit of performance out of your code so that it becomes a smooth experience for your user. So let's get to it. All right, so we can see here we have a very simple world. It's actually the A-frame template with our box, our sphere, and our cylinder. But I've taken all the color out. So let's go ahead and add some texture to this. So let's do source equals fabric. Oops, fabric.jpg. Okay, so we can see here it's fabric.jpg, and you'll notice that there's a split second that it's still white before we actually see the fabric. And let's go ahead and duplicate that for the other ones. So what's happening here, when we use this technique of putting a picture as a texture to our component, every time the browser sees this, it's reaching down to your web server and pulling that picture individually. Now again, because this is a small world, you're not incurring too much of a cost of having to go down to the server, pull the picture, go down to the server, pull the picture, go down to the server, pull the picture. Again, that is time consuming. And imagine now if you have 1,000 components. So it's got to be a better way of doing this. So AFrame offers something called the Asset Manager. And that's created using this tag, assets. Inside of here, what we can do is we can have AFrame preload some images. So I'm actually going to take this, copy here, paste it. And the next thing I'm going to give this an ID, a way of referencing this particular image. All right, cool. So the asset manager, that's what this is called. Even though you just write assets, this is called the asset manager. Will preload this image into memory, and you can refer to that picture in memory by this ID. So what I can do is I can go through and use the hashtag, similar to what you might do with the CSS, for instance. You know, if an item has an ID, you can reference that item in CSS with simply the hashtag. So I'm going to do hashtag texture, and I'm going to duplicate that same thing for the other two components. Okay, and notice how quicker it was. You don't see a blink of white as the page loads. Now, there's also additional benefit of using this type of technique. The other way, let's say I wanted to make all the texture of all the components metal now. I would have had to have gone through each of the sources and replaced that. But because I'm using the asset manager and all these sources are simply associated with some image that has an ID of texture, I can simply change it up here. So I can make this metal.webp. And that's going to change the texture of all the components that have an ID of texture for their source. Now I want to offer one more thing that's interesting when you work with textures. So if you decide to add a color and a texture to your components, you'll see that it actually tries to combine both of them. So you can see here, it has the texture of the, get a little closer, has the texture of the metal, but now it's also red. So again, you could definitely have a lot of fun with that in terms of changing the way the textures look on top of your components. But the main thing for this video is for you to appreciate the asset manager will preload any resource. Now, right now we're focusing simply on images, but in future lessons, you're going to preload sound files, 3D models, videos. Again, and those are bigger files, so they'll definitely take a lot of time to load your VR world if you don't use the asset manager. So let's go back to our presentation and let's review what we've done. So the asset manager is a component in AFrame that can be used to preload resources, such as images, sound files, and videos. Once the resources are loaded, you must give them an ID, because then that ID allows you to reference that particular resource throughout your AFrame world. Again, I definitely encourage you, now that you've gone through this video, uh, every every VR project, use the asset manager. Again, squeeze every performance you can out of your world. So hopefully you're excited about creating these awesome VR worlds, and enjoy.